Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of JKL Media Podcast, where we talk about pop culture and genre stuff and books and music and all kinds of other stuff. So today we're going to talk about Dark Matter by Blake Crouch.
Of Wayward Pines fame.
Exactly. And I thought it was a decent book to talk about. It has a lot to do with the things that we discuss for other things. What?
Introduce.
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
I will.
Sorry.
So we're going to talk about Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. And I just thought it was a decent genre thing to talk about. And I'm going to chat about it with my two lovely co-hosts, some of my best friends in the entire world, Jesse Jackson.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Happy to be sitting in the passenger seat this time.
Okay. I'll be doing the bus driving. And Lou Sitzma.
Hello, everyone. Let's keep this thing dark.
That's right. And of course, Dark Matter is the title of the book, but it's also something that is discussed in technological circles and scientific circles. And it does have a little bit to do with the book, a little bit. It's mostly about quantum mechanics.
Multiverse.
And, right. And as we know, and again, I recommended this as the next thing to talk about without realizing that it has a pretty direct parallel to devs. So that may be something that I am fixated on, is the multiverse and things like that. I don't know. I love time travel. I like multiverse stories. So I guess this is my weakness, is time travel-ish, multiverse-ish sort of thing. So basically, it's about a physicist who, in two different universes, has taken different paths, and how the two Jasons, who is the main character's name, the two Jasons have different opinions upon how they are satisfied with their lives. So let's get a basic overall kind of vibe from you guys. Lou, what did you think?
Yes, I have.
And you had previously read
Blake Crouch
right?
is, to me, is this generation's version of Michael Crichton. So the strength of his book is definitely his ideas, to me, not his characters. And I think of Blake Crouch books as palate cleansers between reading really heavy or more character-based or more world-building type of stories that are more emotional stories. So that those ones, they really take a lot of mental effort and emotional effort for you to read. And after a while, if you just have a steady diet of that, it can become quite taxing. So every once in a while, I like to clean my palate with a light read, a quick read. And for me, that's what Blake Crouch falls under. The same as the Michael Crichton books. It's the same type of thing. It's much more the idea. And I think of the last three books that he's written Dark Matter, Recursion, and Upgrade. Dark Matter is my favorite of the last three books that he's written. I just think it's a little more fleshed out in the character perspective. And I think that theme is a little more universal about, what life you've lived, that what would you do different? Like, do you have regrets and things like that? And I've probably talked too much already. So I was supposed to give quick thoughts. So I'll stop there.
No.
And I'll let Jesse chime in.
No, that's fine. I want to mention that I completely agree with you. One of the critics of the book said that it's a wonderful life with technology.
I think it's,
and I think that's a perfect analogy.
Modern extension of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, the O. Henry story.
Yeah, very nice. Yep. Okay, how about you, Jesse?
I had not read anything by this writer. And so I when you suggested, I went to Amazon, picked up the Kindle version, and started to read it, and was immediately captivated into this world. I shared with both of you as I started
Mhm.
reading it that had a Fringe vibe to me, and which is a good thing. Fringe is one of the series that when I find time, I'm going to rewatch because I think it would bear up a rewatching altogether. I always use that as a good example of a series that did a good job of weaving individual stories along with a big arc. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this novel. I like the characters. I'm a little disappointed in the ending. I wanted more of a concrete ending, though I get why the writer chose to end it the way it did. But I'm very happy with this book, and we'll probably go check out some of his other stories to talk about that. I think I really think he's an interesting writer.
I'd recommend Upgrade next.
Okay.
I like that book. I don't like it more than Dark Matter, but
Okay.
it's interesting as well, and it's on the same vein. I mean, he is definitely not the heaviest of authors, and I think, like Lou said, it's more about the overall story and not the individual characters. It's because some of his characters are not likable, and some of his characters are just that, characters. They're placed in the book and they're meant to be kind of a pivot point for something, but they're not really fleshed out. I mean, there's a villain in this book that's very much a mustache twirling villain, and we don't really get a lot from him. But we know he's a horrible bad guy, and that's Leighton, by the way. And I do like that, and I reread it yesterday, and it did make me feel the things that I felt the first time I read it. And there's a bit of the storyline that really gets to me, and it's concerned with Amanda. I think that while Jason is the main character, I think almost Amanda is us. That we see a lot in ourselves in Amanda, or we're supposed to at least. So I want to talk about her just in particular right off the bat. She rescues Jason, and in doing so, she has no other choice but to go on this journey with Jason, where you go into the Schrodinger's box and you take this drug that she helped develop, that kind of puts you in the state of not knowing one way or the other where you are. And it's determinism, of course. So you go into the state where you can pick what your outcome's going to be, where you come out. And she is along for the ride, but very much a part of it. So can we talk
Sure.
about Amanda first? Would that be okay with you guys? Okay, go for it. Whoever wants to start. Jesse, you want to start?
Yeah, I liked Amanda a lot. I am glad that they address the chemistry that the two were having. I could see there's another part where you end up not, you give up trying to chase that returning to your life and finding a good life with her. She is a very good companion to kind of use not
The
only the
Doctor
Doctor
Who.
Who comic, but one of my favorite lines from Bruce Springsteen is, "You'll need a good companion on this part of the ride." And she is a very good companion to him. And I liked her a lot. And so to have him kind of be tempted to spend time with her in a more intimate way, yet not doing it, I think was well chosen. And I love the idea. One of the things that I the idea that they did not have unlimited resources, but they did have some resources. Like in her saying, if I had thought about it, I would have grabbed 2 backpacks, but I wasn't planning on going with you. So which kind of left you this, they have a limited array of resources. I really liked her. I think there is a whole nother book out there that you could determine what is her journey. Where is she going to be? Where did she end up? That I think is worth exploring. Yeah, so I really liked her a lot.
Yeah, I think
How
she
about you,
was
Lou?
an interesting mirror to Jason. I think, you know, the author obviously had to find a way to externalize a lot of what Jason was going through, and I took her character to be that mostly, but he did give her some of her own will of mind with the fact that she, you know, left Jason to strike out on her own. So I thought that it's probably one of the more interesting characters that Crouch has written, in that there's this, you know, obviously tension, frisson between the two of them, but in the end, she's turns out to be you know, an independent character that doesn't have to stay by Jason to you know, to be fulfilled, and I like that.
Yeah, same. And I think that's why I brought her up individually before we dive into the main story, because I think she's a standout in this book, that her character is very strong. I love strong female characters in my books. And I thought she was really the standout as a foil to Jason, but also as her own person. She's the one that stops them from getting further in a romantic setting. So she has fortitude, integrity, and independence, and I really dug that about her. Okay, so let's go to the main story, and we have Jason. The first part of the book is, I almost said series. The first part of the book is him in a very normal, everyday setting. He's married. He has a son. He loves his wife. He loves his son. They're having a lovely night, the two of them, and their son is, you know, a normal teenager, poo-pooing them, kissing, and all that sort of thing. And he is talked into going to see an ex-schoolmate of his by his wife after they briefly discuss how his friend Ryan won a prize that he should have won because he's smarter than Ryan, but he took a different path. And she mentions that she could have had a bigger career in the arts, except they decided to settle down and have their son. And they show absolutely no regret for taking that path in life. And Jason decides, okay, I'll go see Ryan, whatever, but I'll be back in an hour. I'm not going to stay out long, and I'll bring back ice cream, which was cute, I thought. And he goes to see Ryan. There's a part in a bar where he and Ryan talk, and you can see that Ryan is really trying to bait him. And it's definitely a jealous situation that, you know, he was jealous of Jason's intellect, and now he feels like he's gotten the better of him by winning this award. And one of the things I like about Jason is that he doesn't really rise to that bait. He says, okay, whatever, that's great. I'm happy for you. I gotta go. And he does. He leaves and he goes back to his wife, and he gets waylaid. But let's talk about this first part of the book and what you thought about how he reacted to Ryan in the bar. What do you think about his family dynamics? Just real quick, and we'll go around. Start with you, Jesse. I almost called you Jason. I'm sorry. I'm the worst today.
No. I was just reminded of this, and I don't, in another episode, and I was recording this past week, and Chris overheard me, and he said, I'd never heard you tell that story before. A mentor of mine, God, this is probably over 10 years ago. I was thinking about leaving my current company and going to work for another company. And I was talking to a guy named Vic Everella. And Vic said, Jesse, you're thinking of this. You're thinking that there is a right decision. And there isn't necessarily a right decision. If you stay with this company, you'll continue to do well. You may not do well, but you'll go forward. If you leave, as much as you're going to miss the people you work with, you will make new relationships, you will build new friendships, because that's the kind of person you are. And will that work out? Don't know. There is no, and in my mind, he of course did not say that. Vic was probably 15, 20 years older than I am. So this isn't a video game where you pick the right choice and that moves you to the next level. There is just choices, and they're neither good nor bad choices. And it only after the fact can you tell, well, maybe I should have zigged instead of zagged. And this is this case where our hero, and both of them, the husband and the wife, have made decisions that have left them happy. They have a good marriage. I would say in a lot of ways a great marriage, but like all marriages, there's ebbs and flows, but they're overall pretty happy. They have a wonderful son, and by getting this adventure, and the guy's kind of giving him a hard time, right? Like, oh, look what you could have done if you'd been me. Um, and because of this adventure Jason goes on, he sees what could have been, and he realizes, and I may be jumping ahead a little bit, that he made in his mind the right decision. For happiness sakes, the life he had was a good life. And while other people might say, gosh, I could have been a contender, right? If I had not done something with you, I could have done something with my art. I could have done with the science. I could have, Linda and I used to joke that I always put being a parent first. And so I left work early to go lead Cub Scouts. I worked early to do, to be chaperones, to do all those things. And, we have both said, hey, if you had been more driven on your career, would you have gone further? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm happy with that decision. And so I love this book. Not only is it an adventure book, not only is it a thriller, but it is that our lead character gets to decide, yes, this life is good. And so that leads this thriller to another level of, you asking yourself, have I made the right decisions? And much like this character, I think I have.
That's nice. I like that.
Yeah, it's
okay. What about you, Lou?
I think this is the setup for the It's a Wonderful Life kind of part of the story, where he has it all, but like any of us, you don't appreciate the things that you have, or like the song, the Rolling Stones songs, you don't know what you got till it's gone. What is that, Rolling Stones? That's somebody else, maybe, I can't remember. Yeah, you don't know what you got till it's gone. No, it's
that's the Rolling Stones.
Joni Mitchell. Yeah, big. Yeah,
Joni Mitchell.
Sorry, and
right. I'm sorry.
He's Blake Crouch is setting this up so that when the multiverse experiences start happening for Jason, you're not sure how committed he's going to be to wanting to get back to his original life. Like, he's kind of in the Garden of Eden, and he might get tempted by an apple that might catch his eye, and that tension is there, which I think is good, because otherwise it's there's no extra tension in his journey to get back to his original life. And that's really what I took most of that first part of the story to be. It's just set up to add more tension to the parallel travels that Jason goes through.
Okay, how about you?
You haven't said what you thought.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I actually like this part. I took a path in my youth, I guess. I could have gone one of two ways. I'm a smart person. I was very good at computer science. So I decided to take that path. My other path was to sing, and they seem very different. I decided that singing, or, just the arts in general, wasn't going to pay off for me. I probably would have gotten good grades, gotten along well in college, but any kind of a career after that would have been very iffy. It's a very hard industry to break into. And this was back in the mid 80s, and computer science was the thing. And I was good at it. So I decided to take that path. So part of me thinks a lot about that, could I have taken the riskier path and been happier, or am I as happy as I could be in this path? And it's a lot like Jason. If this was gone, I think I would appreciate it more, but there are very, very draggy parts to my life that are like, hey, whatever, I'm living it. And I think, I still would have been diagnosed with MS. All that stuff would have happened had I taken the other path. But I wonder, would I have been more fulfilled? And of course, there's always that kind of thought in the back of our mind. And in this case, it really hit home for me because of Daniela, who either could have made a life, with a husband and a family, or she could have been an artist, and she still could have had a husband and a family. We see in the book that she doesn't when she takes that path. But I kind of identified with that part of the story, with the, domestic versus artistic. And that may be what drew me to this book, as well as the sci-fi elements to it. So that part of the story, even though it's not focused on Daniela, it's focused on Jason, it still gave me the feels, where he sees what he has, but he's not appreciative of it, as we see later in the book. So I guess we'll move on from there. I've spoken enough about my personal life. So on his way home, and he was going to come home at the right time, he ends up being late, but he gets abducted, and he thinks there's something familiar about this abductor, but he's not quite sure what it is. And he is taken to this warehouse. He has his clothes taken, and he is given other clothes. There's some weird stuff that happens here that he can't really parse. He thinks he's going to die, obviously. I mean, any of us would at that point. But he ends up just getting beaten and left in this warehouse. And once he passes out, he gets put into this box. No, he doesn't. I'm sorry. Why did I think that? He gets left outside the box, like he's crawled out of it. So anyway, I thought it was interesting that they actually mentioned that he found his abductor familiar. It's, of course, another Jason that abducts him. And you would think that this Jason would really try to disguise their voice or whatever, but of course it's him. So he senses that this person is familiar, even if they're disguising their voice or whatever, which I thought was an interesting little tidbit to put in there. And then he's discovered. He does get put in the box, I guess, doesn't he? I'm sorry, I'm all over the place with this. He gets put in the box because he ends up at the other Jason's life. And he comes out of the box. He is found on the floor of this facility, and they think it's, and in the book, it's called Jason 2. They think it's this other Jason who has discovered this multiverse, discovered how to access this Schrodinger's cat kind of scenario, and that he's come out of the box a little over a year later. They are making a huge deal about it because no one else has come out of the box. They want to know what his experiences are, and they kind of fawn over him until he realizes that this isn't his life. I mean, he wakes up in this different universe and he remembers everything, but there's still a part of him that thinks, was this some sort of fugue state I was in? Do I really have that family? And the thing that tethers him is a line on his finger from his wedding band. And this is a recurring thing in this book, is that he is grounded. This is his touchstone, the imprint of his wedding band, which when it goes away, he ties a little piece of string around his finger, and it draws him back and helps him to realize that this isn't him. And he very slowly realizes that the work that he did before he got married as a scientist, as a research scientist, was headed towards this technology. And he does slowly realize that he was abducted by himself. Someone's living his life, and he needs to get back. And the part where he is held in that facility by Leighton, who is the big bad guy, it was a little on the harrowing side. It was the main tension of the book for me, was this little part where he is being held and he doesn't know what's going on, and he's visited by a psychiatrist who turns out to be Amanda, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like that's very believable, that you would think you were losing your mind. So, I mean, what thoughts did you guys have about that? How would you feel if you were put in that situation?
So I'll go first. I loved the way that they expressed his confusion, right? And that obviously these people know who he is, and there's a sense of familiarity, and that's why I said, "Oh, this is Fringe," right? There's the alternate universe. I did not catch that the person who attacked him was Jason right away. It just slowly came. I understood that, and like all good mysteries, I love the fact that the seeds are planted there. You just have to catch them. And, I always, when you're reading this or watching a series, right, okay, what would I do? Would I go along? What do I do? I tend to be one of those that just tell the truth. Just tell people what's going on, and things will work out easier. But he's worried that if I'm not this guy they think I am, what are they going to do? So he's afraid, and it is you really feel his confusion, you feel his concern, and as we see, this is totally the path not taken, like Robert Frost poem, right? And so that makes for an interesting discussion. And that, I guess my only frustration, right, is I would have just found someone to open up with earlier, but that probably he's probably wiser.
I think this is the part of the story that really hooked me, is the whole conceit that his biggest enemy in the book is himself. And we start off with just the Jason 2, but as the story progresses, it kind of turns into like there's a Next Generation Star Trek episode where there's this Enterprise, and it's meeting all these alternate versions of itself. And, like in one, Picard has been dead, and then another, the Borg are chasing down the Enterprise, and it's kind of on its last legs and all that. So I get that same kind of vibe from the story. And it's interesting that these two Jasons each want what the other has. And then again, it's, you don't know what you got till it's gone, kicks in for Jason at this point strongly. And as Karen said, there's a nice tie-in with the wedding ring and the string to remind himself of that. So that's like his anchor. The only part of the story, and this is the part of the story that I always struggled with, was with how did Jason 2 find Jason 1's universe? Like because there's so many of them. And as we see later on in the story, Jason can't get back to his own universe because he can't be in the right mindset. So how did this Jason 2 get into a mindset that he's not really familiar with? He's longing for it, but that's, to me, is not the same thing as actually experiencing it. So that, to me, that's probably the crux of the story where I had the most trouble with. But it's, every story gets a hand wave, so that was the hand wave for this story. So it's just really the whole concept of Jason battling himself, and it's the ultimate battle, because and it's not even like though in the broader strokes it sort of plays out like the good side of us versus the bad side, but it's a little more nuanced here, but not a lot. So that's probably one of the areas where I think the story could have been improved if Jason 2 had been made more sympathetic to it, because the best villains are the ones that are the hero in their own story, right? But I never really got that feeling with Jason 2. To me, he was just bad Jason, and that was basically it. If that character could have been a little more nuanced, I think that would have elevated the story even more. But I understand that's not this type of story. That's the kind of story that I normally like to read. This is just a quick thriller, so you can't really get into that kind of complexity in this type of story. But that was the strength of it for me. And then the previous things that we talked about with the Jason 1's longing for the success that his friend Ryan had plays out a bit more here. And then with Amanda, you've got that tension of, well, maybe he'll be happy with her instead of going back to Daniela. So I thought that all played out pretty good for this type of story. But I just really dug the whole idea of fighting yourself. I thought that was just way cool.
Same.
Yeah, one of the things that I think, and it's not a total, but Jason 2 is saying, hey, look, I've given you a great life. If you had just,
I'm giving you the life that you want.
You have riches, you have a team. Yeah. And but the issue is he doesn't prepare Jason 1 for Jason 2's life, right? Like, he didn't have any, hey, he didn't even leave him a notebook like, read this. Okay, here's what's happened. You're screwed. I've taken you out of your life, but here's what you've got. You need to tell them blah, blah, blah. Now you're going to have riches, fame, fortune, blah, blah, blah. And it's just not there. I do think that it kind of fills out right that part of the reason why Jason 2 was gone so long is maybe he was looking for this other world. Like, was he thinking, I have all these worldly things, yet I'm unhappy. And then he kind of looks for a world, and then he takes long enough to do his due diligence so that he could step in. You mentioned, Karen, I did love the thread on his ring finger. One of the favorite episodes of Lost is The Constant, universally. And, this thread is literally a thread, a lifeline, a thread to his previous life, and a constant.
Yeah, agreed. At this point also, where he's still trying to figure out what's going on, he escapes and he finds the Daniela of that world, who, they never got together and they never had a son. So she is a celebrated artist who happens to be dating Ryan, his counterpart, I guess. The scientist that wasn't as smart, but ended up with a quote unquote better life in his world. I don't think it's a better life, but that's the conceit, at least. And he interacts with them, tells them the truth. And this is what I was going to say to you, Jesse. If you had told the truth, like your instinct in real life, like your instinct, you'd be dead. So he does find Daniela and Ryan. He ends up being with this Daniela of the other world, which he regrets later on. But he ends up drawing them into this web where since he's told them what's happening in his reality, they get pulled in and they are both killed by Leighton and his goons, who definitely don't want it to get out that this experiment is not as successful as it looks. So I was sad that Daniela and Ryan died in this world, but a part of me was very detached because they were not fleshed out characters. And I also had this feeling like that wasn't real. And I think that's part of the main Jason's mindset, is that that world isn't real to him. So while he's gutted, he has to move on and try and find his Daniela. And he's traumatized, but not to the point where he gets off the path of his goal, which is to get back. And I would like to think that Jason 2 finds Jason's world by trying and failing to find his world and just saying, I want to go to a world where I'm happy. And that's where he opens the door and he is in our Jason's world, because that Jason is happy and content. And he decides, okay, yeah, this guy's pretty happy. He doesn't have all the bells and whistles that I have, but he has a good life. I'm going to stick it out here. I'm going to put myself in his place. He spies on this Jason probably for a couple of months at least, and ends up trading places with him. And that's just my thought, since, we understand what happens as the book goes along, that it's whatever's in your mind, that's where you're going to open the door. And I thought that was an interesting note, that he finds the Daniela and Ryan of that world. He sees how different they are. And this is what really solidifies that he's in the wrong place, that this experiment that he started when he was younger became this monster now, and he has to find a way to get back. And that's his motivation for getting back, that he realizes he can't stay in that world. That's not him. That's not his life. He doesn't want that life. He wants his Daniela that he's happy with. And I do think it's reasonable to assume that he would still be in love with that Daniela, the artist Daniela. He is mesmerized by her art installation. And it's something that Jason 2 said to her that spurs this whole kind of maze thing that she has in this exhibition. And so he is captivated by it. And I think that's part of his Daniela that he kind of misses, that very esoteric, thinky Daniela, and not the mother Daniela. I'm going to say Daniela and Jason a lot. So it's that thing right now where Daniela doesn't sound like a word because I've said it so much. So that's where I'm headed here. So yeah, he escapes, he does all this, and then his mindset, once he gets recaptured, is, I got to get out of here. I want to get back to my wife. How do I do that? And Amanda, who has visited him a couple times in his cell, finally realizes that they're the bad guys and that she's going to help him get away. She has heard the whole story about how he escaped the first time and what his whole story is. So she's going to help him get away. And knowing now that they've done these horrible things, they've killed these two people, she realizes she's going to have to go with him. And I, like Jesse said earlier, I did like that she said, I should have gotten 2 backpacks. But again, that does give us that urgency. Instead of them having plenty of ampules to get them through a long time, they only have 25 each, 50. And so there's that sense of urgency. And they do end up getting away. They run into the box with Leighton hot on their heels. Another little sci-fi staple is that the bad guy doesn't get away unscathed, that one of the goons loses his fingers in the door when they shut the door, which I thought was, I don't know. I feel like it's necessary to the story because it shows that they were really hot on their heels and that it's kind of a comeuppance for the bad guy. You always want something bad to happen to him. But yeah, they do get away. And I like in this first instance where we see what's going to happen with the box, that Amanda explains to him what's going to happen and he's still not prepared. And then they actually end up seeing what the inside of that Schrodinger's box looks like before they act upon their determinism, which brings them to a door. And the way it's explained is once you make that decision, you have collapsed that multiverse. The minute you open that door, you've collapsed the wave. And I got a very vivid vision in my head of what this would look like, even though it's hard for us to comprehend anything like this. The way he describes it, it's very easy to see that kind of mirror upon mirror upon mirror kind of funhouse look to it, and how intimidating it would be for someone to be in there. So what did you think about that, about how he described that, the look within the box and them getting away and them starting on this journey?
Well, this is
Lou?
the issue, or the toughest nut to crack with these types of stories and with time travel stories, is when you start getting into multiple iterations of characters, it lessens the tension, dramatic tension, because if the characters are indistinguishable from each other, then when one dies, it doesn't really make any difference to the story, right? So I do think that Crouch did crack that nut with this story, because we are with Jason 1, because he's presented as a good guy. But I just can't help but thinking, if we would have started the story with Jason 2 or something like that, we would have, depending on the viewpoint, again, we would have thought he was the hero of the story. So that's the part of the story or the book that I struggled with the most, is saying, well, who am I invested in here? Is it Jason 1, Jason 2? And then after that, he doesn't even, the rest of the Jasons are just like Agent Smiths running all over the place doing whatever they want. So I do think he did a fairly good job with it, but it's a problem that I always have with these time travel type stories. And oddly enough, I think that Back to the Future probably handled it the best out of any time travel story that I've seen, and maybe that's part of the reason why those movies are so well beloved. But yeah, I think he does a pretty good job here. The only thing is that I struggle with it, and that it comes into this part of the story, is the killing. Like, are any of these Jasons that motivated? Like, I don't know, motivated. Are they built that way, that like, it's one thing to really want something, but to want something like that you're going to kill, and especially killing yourself? That's the part of this, the other part of the story that I struggle with. I believe that Blake Crouch has tried to set up the story that, yeah, you go along with that, but that was another hand wave that I had. But it didn't bother me as much as my first hand wave, oddly enough, which it should, because characters that just kill indiscriminately like this is something that's hard for me to swallow most of the time. So yeah, I struggled with it. It's just but I'm also intrigued by the whole concept of a character having to kill multiple versions of himself to get to what he wants. So that I have mixed feelings about it, and I think my ramblings have emphasized that.
No, I think that's a fair get. This is what Hitchcock called an icebox moment, right? Which I love that explanation, that while you're in the middle of the movie, when you're in the book, everything is going on, and then what he said is, you get up in the middle of the night, you go to the icebox, which tells you, right, how dated this is, to get a piece of pie or a midnight snack, and you go, hey, wait a minute. The idea that you would become a killer to get back to your life is
Mhm.
kind of a shady moment. Would you do that? And then you also have where, um, you know, he's relying on them wanting to what's good for their wife and son, right?
But is he really?
It also,
Isn't that
well,
what
at
he
the
really
end,
wants?
right? Yeah, but no, but Ed, like when he says, "Hey, we're gonna have a meeting, and we're going to do a lottery, and you know, we're gonna do this." Um, and I also it got a little confusion on how many fractions are we having, right? Like if he is the prime Jason, what how many other Jasons had that life with them, just with a slightly little change, and why they go back to their lives, you know, with their prime. That's a when you start peeling back the
Mhm.
onion to mix
Well,
my
my
metaphors, you go, wait a
interpretation
minute,
of that would be it's only the Jasons that don't have his life that are showing up. The other ones that have that life, they're staying put.
okay,
So
okay,
because it's an infinite
good,
number of universes, right? So
right,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely. I don't know if, I mean, people will say, I absolutely would kill to protect my family,
Mhm.
but I don't know when push comes to shove, can you do
Yeah.
that?
Because the interesting thing about that is some of those people would say that, and yet when it came to the moment, they wouldn't be able to do it. And then you have other people that say they would never be able to do it, and yet they would be able to do it. So that's what I
Yeah,
find fascinating. So
yeah,
the biggest problem I have is the Jason that we're presented with, Jason 1, doesn't strike me as a killer. So that's the part of the story that I struggle with the most. Like
yeah, I agree with that. The idea of, well, wait a minute, would you, or would you not?
yeah.
So, yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed the book so much,
Hmm.
is the idea of, and the book kept surprising me. Like, okay, we've got this alternate universe. Now we're almost like travelers jumping from,
Hmm.
you know, world to world. And then we get this the book changes again, where we're actually debating on being there for your family and deciding what to do, which makes for a really, really interesting novel of, well, what should I have done, and what is the right thing for my family, and what to do. So yeah, I liked all of this about it, and the questions it brings up is really good. Of now, the original question was the description of the box. I find that the weakest part of the novel, because I really didn't understand that. I didn't understand how, I mean, I understand them having to write down where they think they want to go, but I don't really understand the mechanisms of how the Schrodinger box moves. Like, I don't see a switch. I don't know how do you, like, how can you tell if you want to get there? I didn't really understand the 60 minutes, you know, so it's really not important. You know, I just kind of go, oh, and they're changing worlds. Okay, what's happening?
So this is where it makes me feel super smart, even though I'm not that smart.
Yeah.
Um, the Schrodinger's box, I'm sorry, I'm terrible. Schrodinger's box is literally closing a box. There's no mechanism, nothing. It's just until you open that box, the state inside that box is in flux because you haven't observed it. And so there's no mechanism to the box. The mechanism is the shot that allows your brain to see all these different iterations. And 60 minutes is how long the drug stays in your system, I think. So you have that 60 minutes to choose between, because once that's over, you're just in a black box and it's determined for you where you're going to be, but you're still in the box. So you're dead, you're alive, you're all these different states. And so this shot that you take, the chemical that Ryan helped develop, oddly enough, it opens your mind, like, I guess, like taking LSD or something, and it allows you to see all these multiverses laid out in front of you. So instead of being outside the box, without determining what's going on inside the box, you're the person that can determine what happens when you open the door. And I like that they made it so they would write it in the book, because for me, doing something always kind of solidifies how to do that thing. So when I started posting people's podcasts to WordPress, it was all very hazy to me until I actually did it. And so that's kind of my thing. If you write something down, you remember it better, or, it comes out more solidified, besides just being in your head and not living somewhere else. And so I did enjoy that as well, is that he kind of has a journal of what went on. It's after the fact. Here's what his thought was, and he ended up there. Instead of it, he ended up there and he took notes. And we also see some horrific worlds where their mindset is what determines what happens outside the box. So when they're despairing that they're never going to find their home, they don't. They find a world that was obliterated by a nuclear war or whatever, a snow world where I'm guessing our global warming has accelerated faster. They find a world where just everything is off. People have a virus, which again, I mean, this was written before COVID, and that was chilling to me after this pandemic has struck. And then once they realize that they have to feel the right way in order to come out where they want, it's still not a science to them. They end up finding all these other worlds that are different from their world by just a hair, because they didn't do it correctly. And it ends up being his feelings and not a description of his world. All the feelings that come out of him around his life is what brings him back to his own world. And then, you brought up the other Jasons. So when he does make it back to his world, this was one of my aha moments, was realizing that, okay, yeah, we learn ahead of time that it's what decision you take when you're inside the box that determines. So he's taken all those decisions, and there is a Jason that has made a different one. And they all, or at least the ones in this book, end up at Jason 1's world. And they're all Jason 1. Because before they got in the box, they were the same Jason. It's after they got in the box where they took the different decisions. That's where they branched off. So they all literally have a right to that life. That's where they came from. That's their base universe. But because they've all taken different decisions once they got abducted, they're branched off. And I didn't find it too unbelievable that they would kill each other. I'm assuming that some of those Jasons had worse experiences in the box than Jason 1, than our Jason. And so they've turned into this hardened person that maybe, Amanda died on his watch, that maybe, he's had run-ins with different things. He was attacked, there's all these other experiences that Jason has had. And aren't we a product of the decisions we take as well? And those Jasons have become a product of the things that they witnessed as they took those decisions. So I do agree that our Jason isn't a killer. But as we see, he and Jason 2 aren't. I mean, Jason 2 isn't a killer either. He ends up, being a good Jason. I mean, his motivations came from a good place. He wanted a happy life, and he wanted to give that Jason a happy life. And that's how he justifies taking over. And when we get all these other Jasons coming forward, I also like the chat room where they got into the chat room, and it's Jason 9, Jason 12,
Yeah,
Jason 26, all talking to each other. And there were little parts of that were humorous, like, Daniela was killed. What? 4 of them all say the same thing at the same time in the chat room. So it's, just
Yeah.
reinforcing that they're all the same person. And our Jason, who of course is the protagonist in the story, so he's going to be written as a likable character. He decides that it's not him. He's been acting for himself this whole time, but he realizes he needs to make his wife and son happy. Ultimately, that's the people he needs to make happy. And if he has to sacrifice himself to make that happen, he will. So he does come up with this idea to get all the Jasons together to trust each other. And I thought it was cool also that he's like, I know myself. And if I can say, this is what, if we want to act on behalf of Daniela, we should all feel that way because it's me.
Right.
So let's have a lottery. If you all are really me, you'll want what's best for Daniela and Charlie, and you'll want to come and do this lottery. And one of us will live this life and the rest of us will figure out what to do. And of course, Daniela isn't on board with that. She has already understood what's happening, which took a little bit of explaining. And she has fallen back in love with our Jason and doesn't want a different Jason. And so, that has different connotations as well, that, Daniela also can make a choice. So this, I feel like this whole story is about choice and what you do with it. And so, of course, that goes wrong because our Jason doesn't realize that some of the other Jasons have been through things that have made them not want to do this lottery. That's their life and they want it back. And it is their life, but, they're not acting in the way that they should. So we know that if they took over that life, Danielle and Charlie wouldn't be happy. And he is again ambushed while he is hiding out with Daniela before this lottery happens. Those guys don't want to do a lottery. They want to come. They want to kill our Jason in order to take over that life. And we do get like a trail of carnage where these bloodthirsty Jasons are killing each other on the way to kill him. And it feels futile to me that these Jasons would be killing each other because it could be an infinite number of Jasons. They'd have to watch out for the rest of their lives. And then, the solution, as you said, Jesse, we understand what's happening where they go inside the box and Jason realizes that since it's him he's trying to outrun, he can't make the decision because it'll be predictable to all the other Jasons. And so he leaves it up to Charlie to pick where they go. And I thought that was a good resolution, but then we don't see anything else past that. We just see Charlie taking the book and starting to write, and boom, that's the end of the book. I completely understand why it's left there, because we know that Charlie is a pure soul and that he's going to pick someplace great for them. I like that Charlie was the only one who realized that Jason 2 wasn't his real dad. I thought that was an interesting note as well, that, you can see all the good that's in Jason is in Charlie. And I also wanted to turn the page and get more. But in romance novel terms, this was an HFN, a happy for now, where we don't get to see the marriage and the kids. We just get to see that, yay, and everything works out right kind of deal. Yeah, and of course, the flip side of that would be the happily ever after, where we do get to see everything resolved. So yeah, I understand why he did it. There's a part of him that I think wants us to finish that story in our head, and a part of him that doesn't want to finish it. So yeah, you already talked about the Jasons a little bit. Is there more that you guys want to talk about on that front?
Well, I would just like to revisit the whole concept of the box that you talked about, like Schrodinger's cat. Obviously, the famous experiment where is the cat alive or dead in the box, and you won't know that until you open up the box. Otherwise, it's in a state of flux until that event happens. And this this is the difference between this type of novel and then a character-based novel. And I'll take 11/22/63 to compare or contrast it against. In this story, it's really the whole concept of how this works is what everybody's going to be talking about, and we've already spent a lot of time talking about it. Whereas in 11/22/63, King just says there's a portal in the closet at the back of this restaurant, and it just takes you to the future, and that's it. So you don't really know how it works. You don't really care how it works because you're more interested in the journey that the character who goes through that is on. Whereas in this one, the focus is much less on the character and much more on the mechanism, which some people like. And you know, there's that. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's just a matter of preference. I prefer the 11/22/63 style of multi-world travel versus the one that's used in here, because this one leaves you with questions. Like Jesse had questions about how the box works. You mentioned, Karen, that you said that all the Jasons at the end were Jason 1. I did not think of that at all.
Well, okay, they're not Jason 1. They are the same Jason that was abducted and went into the box.
See, I didn't know. I didn't think that either. So.
Oh, they are, though. I mean, he actually says that in the book.
Okay, I don't remember that, but that makes sense.
Yeah, he feels bad because they are all him before they were abducted, and so he has this kind of torn feeling that yes, they all deserve this life because this is their life as well. And it's all the Jasons that chose a different door,
right?
That are these.
Okay,
other
but you see, now here comes the problem, because now you're going to start asking questions about that premise. You totally could be right, but all those Jason 1s were abducted. Why don't they just go back to their original world? Why do they all come to this Jason 1's world? They all have to.
They are all that Jason 1.
Well,
that is their world. It's after they got in the box and they made different decisions that they become a different Jason.
Oh, okay. They made so many different decisions. That's why they're.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm still struggling with that. I get what you're saying. I didn't take it that way, but I just thought they were Jasons from other worlds, like Jason 2, that wanted Jason 1's world. So
they're all Jason 1, all of them.
Okay.
It's just that they made different decisions once they were abducted and got in the box again.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the Jasons that.
Okay.
We're seeing it.
I never took it that way.
Because, you know, I mean, if quantum mechanics is real, which it's hard to believe it's not, because we all take different decisions every day, it would be throughout our whole life.
Sure.
So it would continue to happen after he goes in the box.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, he'd still be branching from every decision.
Yeah. I would counter what you're saying with the fact that Crouch never specifies that in the story, so that's an interpretation that you could have. I think there other interpretations are equally as valid because the ground rules haven't been clearly set. And then outside of quantum mechanics, there's a whole issue of conservation of energy or of matter. If you're going to have all these multiple Jasons in this world, then what's being taken away to make room for these new Jasons? So see what I mean? So like there's all these complexities that come into this part of the story that for me, I don't really want to be putting my focus on. I really want to be putting my focus on Jason because I prefer characters over story. So, but be that as it may, I do think that it can be very complicated. And I think Jesse's point about how does the box work, I was toying with the idea that if Jason was going into the box, then other Jasons and other universes were going into the box at the same time, and that's how they were leaping. But that doesn't hold up because
Jason 2 invented it, and he abducted Jason 1, and so theoretically those would be the two that go into the box.
Yeah. So like. My point is that the focus is on the story, is on that device and not the characters. So that's what I was in my rambling way I was trying to say.
No, I get it completely.
Okay,
I do. And I think that's just before Jesse goes real quick. That's part of why I like this, because I like those things that make you think about the science behind it. I've always been fascinated with things like that, with quantum physics, and you know, I was good at math and science and computer technology and stuff like that. So in science, there is a very well-defined group of things that, you know, theorems that have been proved and proved and proved, and there's no deviating from it. You know, if something, force goes in one direction and it also goes in the other direction. You know, there's very well-defined pieces, science. But there's also things that we might never understand about science. And that's the kind of thing that fascinates me, is that kind of debate on what's going to happen. We will never know, I don't think, what quantum mechanics is. It's hard to think that we would know what it is, because we're not that cat in the box. And the cat might know, but we'll never know, because even if we go into the box, we're seeing it from a different perspective. I don't know. That's all.
But even in this story, the moral is that it's the characters that are important, not the science. So that's
right.
kind of, I find that kind of ironic.
Right. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay,
Yeah,
Jesse,
so-
sorry.
No. So here's my nitpick is, okay, they've had his son pick a place that no one else will know, but there is another Jason
Charlie.
and another, another Charlie in this new world. What are they going to do?
Yeah, I'm assuming that they just decide to live somewhere else.
So how are they going to create new documentation? How are they going to live? How are they going to make money?
Right.
I mean, all these things come to my mind that that is hard.
Where's the romantic Jesse? No, we're getting the practical Jesse.
Right?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Just so
the romantic Jesse wants a happily ever after.
Yeah,
and
happily ever after. Yeah. So yeah, I did think it was very clever that he knew there is only one of his son right now, right? And so therefore, by letting him pick that,
But is there only one?
you get well in this scenario right now.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Right?
I got you.
Yeah. And so by having them, it is, it's kind of the trope of, I'm going to do what I normally wouldn't do, and so therefore you can't second guess me.
Except if you knew I was going to do what I didn't do, then you would know what I was going to do.
And who would know better than yourself?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah. There's no way around that for Jason.
Yeah. So it is, I'm very happy that I read the book, and these are minor nitpicks, right? That I'm going, okay, here's the doing. I think it's a great story. I'm really glad you picked it. And we've been talking over an hour, so that tells you what a good story it was. Yeah. So I'm very, very happy. And like I said, I will be reading some of his other books just to kind of get a feel. And
I'll say again, I find the characters in this book his strongest characters out of the three that I mentioned earlier. So that's why I like this one better than the other two.
And in Upgrade, you kind of get a Jason character.
Yeah.
So that's why I recommend that one over
Recursion.
Yeah. But they're all good, all three of them.
Yeah.
I
like they're good quick reads. That's what I'm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were quick reads. One of the things I would love is for another book to talk about Amanda's journey.
Yeah, same.
I think that would make for a very interesting discussion.
Maybe that picks up where she
leaves, and then what kind of journey does she find a happy for now?
Right. Exactly right.
Yeah. And so I think I would love to see that.
Yeah, she probably went and found a Jason that doesn't know anything about what's going on.
Right.
Right.
Yes. I can see that happening.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And just before we go, I wanted to mention that part of the reason I chose this is because Apple TV is producing a short series based on the novel.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. directed by, I'm sorry, Matt Tolmach. Sorry, I don't know what he's done. And the main character is played by Joel Edgerton, who
cool.
I think is a really great character. He also plays Warcraft, which is awesome. Jennifer Connelly plays Daniela. And then Alice Braga plays Amanda.
Wow.
And yeah, it's a really great cast.
Yeah,
we have,
strong.
very. And Ryan is played by Jimmy Simpson, who, if you know him, he was in a lot of other stuff, Psych. He was in Person of Interest, but what most people know him from is Westworld, where he plays the young William.
Oh, okay.
In the first season. Right. And he's a very good actor. I like him as well. Mm-hmm. And I just think it's really going to be interesting to see what the differences are between the book and this series. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Mm-hmm. I don't know how it's going to play out. Right. It seems very not really conducive to a format like that, where it lives outside your brain. But I really do hope it does the book justice. Yeah,
that would be cool. So,
yeah. A really good cast at the very least.
One other tidbit I'll add is because I was just looking up while we were talking earlier, is the character Jason Dessen. The Dessen in German is the pronoun for his. So
that's very interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I like that.
I assume that was a deliberate choice on Crouch's part.
I'm assuming so as well. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think of it as a yogurt, even though it's Dannon and not Dessen, but that's what it... Desante, yeah, exactly. It makes me think of that for some reason, but yeah, so I'm glad you guys both liked it. I knew that Lou had read it before and that Jesse hadn't, so we're kind of coming from those different perspectives, and I think it's always an interesting thing, an interesting discussion that we have when we're coming from different perspectives. Yeah. And also that it's a really kind of a deep scientific thought. And also there are some characters that are interesting in the book. And so it kind of hits on different things that we like and dislike.
So Jesse, you're a big Michael Crichton fan, aren't you?
A casual fan.
Oh, okay. I thought for some reason you were a big Michael Crichton fan.
I am.
Do you think this is a modern day Michael Crichton? Yeah.
It has that feel. I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Not so much in the vein of Jurassic Park, but in his other books, like The Andromeda Strain and things like that. Coma, yes, very much, where he's based it on the science. He was a doctor in real life, so a lot of his stuff is based on experiences he had and expounding upon those to make it a fantasy world. And I think that's the kind of feel I get from Blake Crouch as well, is that he's taking things that he knows or has researched or something like that, and he kind of puts it in this fantasy world, and it's very much like that. And Michael Crichton was definitely kind of a light read. There were some deep themes in some of his books, but ultimately it was, like you said earlier, a palate cleanser between other like really serious heavy books. And I do think it's a lot like that, a Michael Crichton book, and R.I.P. Michael Crichton. I miss him. He wrote a lot of really good things. If you're not into anything but Jurassic Park, you need to go back and find some other Michael Crichton stuff, because he had some really high points in his I was going to say discology, but you know what I mean, his bibliography.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so I'm glad we talked about this. I think this was a more successful poll than the Justice League book that I suggested.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Looking back on it, I feel like that wasn't the best use of our hour.
That's okay. It's okay, but it's each of us our choice, so that's what counts. I think, and there will be somebody out there that likes that. So
a lot of people like that book, but for us, it's it was a hit or miss.
Yeah. Very nice.
All right. So Jesse, I'll hand it back over to you to finish things up.
Yeah. So hope you enjoyed this. Coming up, we are way getting off the path. We will be discussing, and in a timey-wimey way, I'm not sure when this will come out. These are kind of our fill-in episodes when we run into a thought. Like coming up Easter Sunday, we probably won't record. So we have something in the bank. But coming up, we are going to talk Bruce Springsteen film Western Stars, and I can't wait to have that discussion. This may be the worst episode ever, but
No,
it'll be
absolutely
fun for me.
not.
Yes. But for now, Lou, if someone wants to reach you, how can they?
You can find me. I believe I'm Lou One, but that might be
Yes.
up for
You
debate.
are Lou One,
but
definitely.
You should be able to find me on YouTube. You can find me on YouTube at Lou's Reviews, where you'll find these podcasts, the JKL Media Podcast, and as well as our Babylon 5, the Stephen King and a Writers Podcast. On Twitter, you can find me at Lou W. Sitzma or S. King
And Karen?
Podcast.
It depends on whether you like computer science or singing more, whether I'm Karen 1 or Karen 2. But I'd like to think I'm Karen 1. But I am Aliveria with no 1 or 2 behind my name. Just Aliveria, Aleveria. And there is a link in my blog on Twitter to my website, at which you can find a bunch of other links. So I took that choice.
And I am Jesse Jackson, DFW on Twitter. The Reverend Jackson might be Jesse 1 and I might be Jesse 2.
Maybe.
You can hear us talk every week about Babylon 5. I hope you're joining us with that. We would love for you to go do an iTunes, rate and review us. So Lou, Karen, as always, this is a lot of fun. It makes my Sunday morning very happy, spending time with both of you. Listeners, I hope you've enjoyed this time with us. But for now, be safe, be kind, and we will talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And scene.
The proceeding has been a JKL Media production.